As Cicero is here in this entire presentation offered as a model to Barack Obama, so one of Cicero's chief characteristics was a deep respect for the achievements and excellent models of the past. A first element in Cicero's methodology, where he starts his search for direction and illumination, might be thought to be a sign of his conservative temperament. But it also could have come from the method which Aristotle and Aristotelians demonstrate in their treatises, some of which Cicero knew. That approach is one where, after a field of inquiry is sketched or an important question posed, it is thought proper, if not necessary, to report on how previous inquirers have dealt with it, what part of the truth they have laid hold on, and where their answers are wanting. All of this before and integrating with whatever new understanding, hypothetical or other, is offered on the topic, be the topic physics or politics, or some might say correct public policy. Critical assessment is involved in this method of Cicero. That is the rational testing of different views and different models to determine which is likely or probably true. What model should most likely be imitated? Cicero's attachment to this method is due in part to his admiration of Socrates, where he finds it instantiated and ultimately the best way of approaching the truth, theoretical or practical. His attachment might well have been furthered by his experience with how this method worked in the adversarial processes of the courtroom. The methodological lesson of Cicero is manifest at various points in our American tradition, and one of them is in the Federalist Papers. Listen to this statement by Madison in Federalist number 14. "Is it not the glory of the American people," wrote Madison, "that whilst they have paid a decent respect to the opinions of former times and other nations, they have not suffered a blind veneration for antiquity, for customs, or for names, to overrule the suggestions of their own good sense, the knowledge of their own situation, and the lessons of their own experience. Both the element of the decent regard to the opinions of former times, inclusive of the examples of former times, and that of testing by one's own good sense and experience, capture this methodological lesson of Cicero. Might one hope, then, that the minds of our leaders and the research efforts of congressional and White House staffs would be impacted by the good sense that always learns from the past, while critically testing its conclusions and even its ideals ultimately against one's own experience? This is the balance that Cicero struck in all matters, between the extremes of a captivating allegiance to the past and a reckless, though sometimes popular, fascination with the new and the novel. Neither what is ancient nor what is modern is, by its chronological place, necessarily the better. The second lesson highlighted in Cicero's experience deals with his experience with human excellence and reflection on that experience. The lesson could be stated this way: the potentially best is the potentially worst, or where there is talent, there is threat. Threat, that is, to justice, inclusive of human liberty, and threat to good order and attendant stability. It is a lesson running through the pages of Plato and Aristotle. Cicero saw the problem of the threat of talent, above all in the Roman garb, in the history of that great nation's development, and then the decline that marked his own lifetime. He saw it in her kings, consuls, orators, and even revolutionaries. He saw it especially in the greatly talented Julius Caesar, whose specter hovers over Cicero's explicit discussion of human magnificence gone awry. This occurs notably in that ethical treatise Cicero wrote for his son, and written in the year after Caesar's assassination. Painfully, Cicero remarks there, after explicitly naming Caesar, "It is in the greatest souls and in the most brilliant geniuses that we usually find ambitions for civil and military authority, for power and for glory. There we find them springing up. Of the forms of excellence that might go awry, there is none that more consistently gets Cicero's attention from his earliest years than that of the persuasive power of rhetoric. In the early years of his life, he wrote as follows: I have often seriously debated with myself whether men and communities have received more good or evil from oratory and a consuming devotion to eloquence. For when I ponder the troubles in our commonwealth and run over in my mind the ancient misfortunes of mighty cities, I see that no little part of the disasters was brought about by men of eloquence. Just a few lines later, in this amazing statement Cicero made when he was the age of many of the students here with us, the age of 19, just a few lines later, he concludes in words that are themselves eloquent. I have been led by reason itself to hold this opinion first and foremost, that wisdom without eloquence does too little for the good of states, but that eloquence without wisdom is generally highly disadvantageous and is never helpful. Therefore, if anyone neglects the study of philosophy and moral conduct, which is the highest and most honorable of pursuits, and devotes his whole energy to the practice of oratory, his civic life is nurtured into something useless to himself and harmful to his country. To recapitulate these first two lessons, they are, to be sure, broad lessons that have been brought forward, namely a basic methodology or approach to getting at practical as well as theoretical truth, an approach that starts with a look at what has been done or achieved and then subjects it to contestation. One general lesson that then emerges from analysis and testing of the experience of the past is the truth that all power, even the most welcome of powers, constitutes a capacity for harm to the community as well as the individual who possesses that capacity. Cicero offers direction on what might be done to avert that harm while welcoming human empowerment. I must be very brief in stating the third and fourth lessons of antiquity that are considered in the fuller paper. These lessons draw us to consider policy sectors that represent but a couple of areas, though important ones, where the young Obama administration is active. No one could definitely say what a prudent person would specifically advocate as in concrete circumstances of the present hour. And a prudent person is what Cicero wants to be and wants his model political leader to be. In this respect, it is not unreasonable to see in Cicero a kind of principled pragmatism, and to see some evidence of that in Barack Obama. So, what then does Cicero's form of rational inquiry and his broad finding lead us to when we consider policy areas affecting the status of natural science and the status of private property? It will surprise many to discover in Cicero that he is appreciative of the deep human satisfaction that comes with the pursuit of knowledge, indeed knowledge for knowledge's sake. And he is also explicitly aware, as was Aristotle before him, of the technological fruit that stems from scientific inquiry.